Coming up next on The Voice of Alabama Politics, jobs, jobs, jobs. Also, a look at competitive state races. And will the legislature choose more cultural wars or more economic development? Your guess is as good as mine. All this and much, much more coming up next on The V. Welcome to The Voice of Alabama Politics, where we tackle the tough issues so you have the hard facts. I'm your host, Bill Britt, and today I'm joined by Susan Britt, research guru extraordinaire, Charlie Walker, assistant to the editors at APR, and Josh Moon, columnist and investigative reporter at APR. Welcome.
Hey, everybody.
Hello.
You know, it's pretty much foregone conclusion. I mean, Tuesday is, 2 days away, and it certainly looks like there will be a Republican sweep in Alabama. There's a few questionable races, but as far as the constitutional offices and who runs the State House, that's a foregone conclusion. One of the things, Susan, that we've been asking ourselves for a long time is, will we see more of the culture wars that we saw in the last quadrennium, or will we see more of the economic development issues that need to be handled to move the state forward? I'd first like to, look at these culture wars where there are certain Republicans that are still pushing for critical race theory to be banned in the schools and to criminalize the treatment of transgender youth. I mean, these are two big ones that are on the agenda.
Well, to start with, the thing with critical race and the banning for the transgender children is easy. That's very easy to talk about. That's very easy to, put in legislation that we really don't need because it's not anything that's rampant in the state for either cause. But it's very easy. If you get into trying to do economic development, they have to think that through. They have to come up with a plan. And that's not quite as easy. So I'm betting on they're going to continue the culture wars. However, the one problem I have with those is that they're saying they're doing this for the children. If they really want to do something for the children, let's look at our free lunch programs. Let's look at our free breakfast programs. Let's look at after school care for kids. Let's look at their health care. Let's look at some skills that actually affect children.
I mean, Josh, we fought a culture war that ended in blood and death for Americans. We called it the Civil War. Because one side felt that slavery was okay, and the other side did not. So we're not quite there yet, but it still gets pretty vicious, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is, honestly, what happens when you elect a lot of dumb people. Because, at its core, going and governing is a boring, difficult job. Okay. So to go and do the job well requires some people who go down to Montgomery and take the job seriously. They meet with constituents. They meet with each other. They meet with experts. They talk about things. They work through policies with attorneys. They work through the legislative offices there, legal offices. They come up with legislation that moves the state forward, whether it be through the budgets or through certain measures that help out this state to go forward. And so those things are pretty boring. It's a lot easier to sit and scream about these culture things that you really don't have to define, because none of them can define CRT. I had no idea what it was 2 years ago. Right. Or talk about transgender youth and not really give a damn that they're probably pushing kids to commit suicide. So these things are easier to do for them than it is to actually go and govern. And I guess it gets them more attention. And, in the age of social media and other things, I guess this is what happens when you do these sorts of things in your government, and these are the people that you rely on to do it.
I mean, Charlie, you go ahead.
Oh, no, I just wanted to mainly piggyback on the initial question that you asked Susan as to like if it would continue, which is the question is absolutely yes, because I think that they have these Republicans that we keep electing have realized that fear works. Fear works in intimidating and manipulating the base. You know, all these scary things disguised as, you know, critical race theory, like we've been saying, and, you know, evil trans youth. They realize these things, scaring their base, is how they're going to continue doing these things. So I absolutely believe it's going to continue.
And I do understand that people become concerned about changing society, things that they don't understand, and that being scary. We shouldn't dismiss people's fears.
Yeah.
And I didn't mean that the way you saw it. The politicians gin up fear.
But
we shouldn't dismiss people's real fear.
Okay, critical race theory is taught at higher education level in college as an elective. It is not taught in schools.
Right.
It is not taught to children under the age of whatever. It's not in K through 12. That is simply, bottom line, a scare tactic. That's all it is.
How many books and you know, great movies and novels and things have got to be written and about understanding these things that you fear, so you don't fear them any longer? How many, before we learn that lesson, how many of these things do we have to watch and take in before we learn the lesson that things are a lot less scary if you just simply learn the facts, the accurate facts about what they are? And that's the case with CRT. It's the case with the transgender youth treatments that we're talking about banning. If people actually understood the process that goes into those treatments for those youth that are struggling so much, man, that they're, you know, one of the highest suicide rates in the world. I think that we would have a little better understanding of what we're doing and a little lower opinion of the people who are pushing this nonsense.
And to know that, you know, this is not, they're not treating every child as transgender, okay? These occurrences are not that often, but they make them seem like they're going into schools and trying to recruit children to be transgender.
Like it's an everyday thing.
Yeah, and
this is not happening every day, especially in Alabama.
It's not, but I think I want to go back to a point that I think we talked about earlier, is that we are always been divided along cultural issues. We need to try to understand each other. But instead of talking more about unity, I'm just really giving up on unity. What I want to talk about is tolerance, to be tolerant of the differences that people have. I mean, don't stand there with a gun and a Bible in your hand and tell me you're for peace and you're for love. Yeah. That is not the way it works. That's not the gospel according to Jesus Christ.
No.
I mean, that's not. But that's what we've got so often here.
And it just because you and our opinion differ does not make you evil and my enemy. That's ridiculous.
Go ahead, Josh.
No, it
Last
doesn't.
words.
But wait, but I would like to say that some positions that people hold do make them evil and a villain in this, okay? I mean,
does.
There are extremes that we have reached. And I mean, when you go in and you beat an 82-year-old man with a hammer, you're an evil person, you know, and you're following evil rhetoric to do that. And that's not okay.
All right, we're going to have to leave it right there. You're watching the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back.
Speed is one of the biggest factors in a fatal car crash. Your car stops, but your body does not stop at the same time. Your body keeps going, you know, and that could be running into your seatbelt, that could be hitting the airbag. Something has to stop it, and unfortunately, it's something very hard.
There have been times that we've come upon accidents where if people weren't speeding, they'd probably still be alive today.
It's truly dangerous, and it puts everybody at risk.
There's just no point to it. This kind of stuff has got to stop.
I'm Donald Trump, and I love Alabama. As many of you know, there are few issues facing our nation as important as election integrity and election fraud. This is why the people of the great state of Alabama must work together to make it easier to vote and harder to cheat. So get out, register to vote, and get a photo ID so you can make your voice heard and decide the future of our great country. Thank you.
Welcome back to The V, the voice of Alabama politics. Before we get started on these next topics, I want to say this. I know a lot of Republicans, friends of mine, and people that I respect that have no more use for these kind of nonsense culture wars than anybody else. They do have concerns about where the country's going from time to time, and I think that's just human. But I just wanted to add that there are plenty of good Republicans that may be silent a lot of times, and Josh, I know you'll take exception with that, but do not feel this way, but do not speak out.
No, listen. I don't take exception with what you say. We all have friends on the other side, but yeah, it's reached the point on a lot of things where the silence on many issues, or even just kind of playing along with some of this stuff. That the election was stolen, for example, or that maybe the elderly man was part of some scheme when he got hit with a hammer, or those sorts of things are dangerous and they're awful. And there should be no harm if you're in a political party that you are harmed by simply speaking the truth to these horrible things. Then I think you really ought to take a look at where you're at.
Well, I think most of the sane Republicans did not jump on Mr. Paul Pelosi's attack poorly. Some of the crazies did. And the
crazies are louder.
We're going to have to move on. Generally, in Alabama, there are no competitive races. And we've identified 5 that have the potential, Susan, to be competitive.
Yes, we have.
But we're not certain that they are, but it appears that they could be. One of them is District 10, which is up in the Huntsville-Madison County area. And that's between Democrat Marilyn Lands and Republican David Cole. David Cole's a doctor. Marilyn Land is a very popular business individual up in that area. Josh, you did a report that shows David Cole doesn't even live in District 10.
Yeah, it does help a lot, I think, if you live in the district that you're running to represent. So, it's pretty apparent from the records and things that David Cole does not live in District 10. And I mean, he has an apartment that they're renting currently that is in District 10, but he failed to meet the deadline. He tried to get around it by leasing basically space at another person's house in which they never really lived. And so there'll be a court challenge, I'm sure, coming out of this. And I'm guessing that should he win, which I'm not convinced he's going to win. From the internal polling and things that I'm aware of, Marilyn Lands is doing very well in this race. And I think she probably will go into Tuesday as the favorite, as odd as that is to say. But so it may be that this is all a moot point. But at the same time, it would be nice if you lived in the district that you're running to represent. Yeah.
Charlie, you look like you're chomping at the bit.
Just a little bit. I mean, he said it's kind of a moot point. I mean, not really, though. I mean, the fact that he was able to get this far, breaking the rules the entire time, is kind of a problem.
Yeah. I think it speaks to the fact that there needs to be better checks on what we're talking about with some of this. But, I think that it's probably pretty odd that we have somebody that kind of fakes an address.
Yeah, I mean, that's cheating.
Blatantly.
That's cheating right up front.
I mean, do it to get your kid on a better
District
football
4 for
team.
Pete's
I understand
sake.
that, but, not in a political race.
Another race that's interesting is Democrat Mallory Hagan, former Miss America and news anchor, business person, running against Philip Rigsby up there for the House seat vacated by Speaker of the House, Mac McCutcheon. Now, Dr. Rigsby, he's not doctor, but he's a pharmacist.
Pharmacist, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Pharmacist up there. That race doesn't look as close as others, but it could be. It could be, couldn't it, Josh?
Yeah, I think it's actually pretty close. I think Mallory Hagan has done very well on that. If you follow, just don't take my word for it. Go to some of her social media stuff and look at the things that she's done over the course of the last few months and see the events she's attended and the things she's hosted. She's working. she's out there working for that. In the meantime, as far as I know, Philip Wrigley's in the basement somewhere. And so, which, I mean, with those
work for
views on
Joe
abortion
Biden
that he has, he probably should stay there, I guess.
Well, and
No, but I have to agree with Josh. Now, Mallory has been doing an exceptional job out there campaigning. She is all over the place. So, props
and
to her for
the
that.
interesting thing about it is they really don't. They have the support of leaders like Anthony Daniels and those folks. But as far as the party goes, they have very little support. I want to move on here. Kim Lewis is going to face Republican Tom Butler. Tom Butler's been around forever.
He has about 40 years.
I mean, I like Tom. I don't know Kim Lewis, but that's going to be an interesting race. I think the most interesting race is going to be Democrat current Senator Vivian Figures is running against Republican Pete Reams. And Charlie Reams he was a big January 6th guy.
Yeah, he was at the. He says he left before the rioting began. So,
But he took
I
3
know
bus
that.
loads. He took 3 bus loads of people to D.C.
Yeah,
he chartered
so-
the buses, went up, said, gave an interview and said if they're scared now, wait till we come back.
Exactly.
It's just like, are you kidding me? And he's actually not doing that bad in the polls. That's what's so shocking to me
Well,
about
they've
it.
redistricted.
The thing is they redistricted
hope he'll do better.
Vivian Figures district, and they included a part of Baldwin County, that Spanish Fort area, and so it's made it a little bit more
But
competitive.
according to Reams, it was the Democrats that redistricted it. As far as I know, the Democrats haven't redistricted,
In the dark of night.
anything since prior to 2010.
In the dark of night, Susan, the
Yes, in the
Democrats
dark of
came
night.
in and
I'm like-
redistricted this. And what they're really upset about, let's be honest now, what they're really upset about there is the fact that their majority white little area was grouped in to a majority black district. And they're going to be represented by a black lawmaker if Vivian Figures wins.
boo-hoo.
That's what they're upset
Vivian
about.
Vivian Figures is one of the greatest
Lucky.
stateswomen we have in this state. She does an excellent job. She carries herself, with dignity, unlike some other lawmakers, and really puts good policy bills out there with thought to
Well,
them.
I can't believe Josh is making this about race again, but we're going to have to leave it right there. You're watching the voice of Alabama politics. I forgot which camera to look at.
Throughout my career, I've seen many crashes, and a lot of the fatalities are from people who haven't worn their seatbelt.
Cars have rolled over multiple times.
I've had people end up in lakes, ravines. I've been looking for people in the woods for a couple hours before.
Usually just about every bone in their body is broken, their organs have ruptured, and typically they die.
You want to save a life, just simply click a button and put that seatbelt on.
Seatbelts really do save lives.
There was an old woman who lived in a shoe. She had so many children, she didn't know what to do. She gave them some broth without any bread and kissed them all soundly and put them to bed. Hunger is a story we can end. End it at feedingamerica.org.
Welcome back to the voice of Alabama politics. As we talked about before, it'll be a Republican majority when they come back in March. We'll have new leadership in the House, but pretty much everything else is going to stay the same. I want to go back to economic development. Economic development is such an important part of what the legislature needs to make sure happens. And that's by regulations, by opening up opportunities and all this.
Economic incentives.
Economic incentives, those types of things. Because the thing that I think, and this is my opinion, if a person has a good job, if they're making a decent wage, a lot of their other problems fade. You know, that's like we talk about these culture wars. When you're making good money and you're all this, you're not as concerned about the things that make you bad because you're living your life. But anyway, your thoughts, Susan.
As we were talking about earlier with, you know, if they're going to focus on the culture wars or if they're going to focus on economic development, or, you know, the best thing you can do for children is get their parents a job.
Yeah.
Now, that solves a multitude of problems, and whether it's in domestic violence at home, whether it's food insecurity and all these things. And this is something that, I mean, we live outside of Gadsden, and when you drive through Gadsden now and you see the defunct steel plant, you see the defunct Goodyear, those companies used to unify that community. It made that community, and now there's nothing there. You realize how important economic development is. I mean, we put 50,000 jobs plus in the last year.
Yeah.
We're at 2.6 unemployment rate. I mean, that's fantastic. And if we continue to do that, we continue to better our state.
And Josh, I'm not just talking about crony capitalism here, you know, and this whole economic development thing is not perfect. But it's what we have to do to compete. And I know you've looked at this from every angle. You get where we're going on this thing.
Yeah. I mean, I tell you what I hate is that so often we boil economic development down to simple dollars, either dollars that we give out in incentives or dollars that come in through these number of jobs or because we have a cheap workforce or something like that. When, in fact, as North Carolina has proven, a state that, you know, we could mimic ourselves after North Carolina in a lot of ways, and I think do very well. But they have proven that there is much more in totality in attracting good paying jobs and responsible corporations to your state than simply giving them big economic incentives. And that's improving your infrastructure that would attract such things. Your workforce development should begin at pre-K and stretch through good schools all of kids' lives. Those sorts of things that Democrats talk about all the time. And listen, Democrats started with economic incentives and attracting the car industry to the state to begin with. So, you know, I understand the importance of a lot of these things, and they are important. And I'm not against totally giving out economic incentives. But I think we need to start broadening our focus on these things and understanding a little bit better of what attracts a lot of these businesses, because you're not going to get top businesses like Toyota Mazda that came to Huntsville because of the broad, educated workforce that resides in this particular area of the state. And I think we need to do that everywhere.
And I will have to say that economic development and workforce development has been a priority of the Ivey administration. It has been a priority, but it takes time. You know, if you look at North Carolina's history, this all started with Governor Terry Sanford back in the 70s. I mean, so it's, you know, they got a head start. Think of who our governor was in the 70s and 40 years ago and who they had. Charlie, any thoughts on that?
No, not really on that. I actually kind of wanted to jump back to what Josh had said. I had just a small comment in agreement with what he said. I mean, just still reiterating the fact that they don't really seem to get. If you improve people's livelihood and give them a steady foundation, they will be more happy and motivated to work. They will be here and we'll see success overall as a state. So I don't see why that constantly has to be repeated.
And
I don't either.
Workforce development.
You look at these businesses that are looking to relocate to places, or you know what? If we had this educated workforce that we're talking about, we wouldn't have to rely on businesses to relocate. We would have startups that are here. We would have innovation that originated within our state instead of continually losing these smart young people to other states and other regions.
Exactly.
Well, and I agree. And having this having started as a startup without any help from anyone, you know, except for our advertisers and our good friends and supporters. You know, this is what happens with entrepreneurship. Okay. The other thing is, and I think there's kind of three things in my mind. You got to have good infrastructure. You got to have a good workforce. The third thing that we sometimes fail to remember is quality of life. Things for people to do outside of work. You know, parks and movie theaters and
Just saying, Montgomery, you need to work on that.
Those grow on demand as the workforce grows. Then those can prosper as well. Those can crop up as well.
But I think, look, when people are looking for places to move companies, they're going to look at your quality of life, and they're also going to look at your position on social issues.
Yep.
That's just part of it, because nobody wants to bring their corporation to a place where their children aren't welcome.
Listen, you're not going to have a diverse workforce that you're going to implant in a place where they don't encourage and welcome diversity. Okay,
Yeah.
You're just not going to do it. And diversity means more than simply black and white. It's a whole spectrum of folks now. And if you aren't focused on that, then you're going to lose out 9 times out of 10.
Well, our politicians, I believe, I do believe Governor Ivey is heavily invested in this. I think we'll see that more in these 4 years.
Yeah, and she's very heavily invested in the workforce development programs as well.
And education, and as well as, but this is one of many priorities that will move the state forward. And because we've got to move beyond the mindset that we are an island unto ourselves and that we can be as backwards as we want to be. We got to move forward. But anybody
that
want to
goes
take
back
up the
to
last
tolerance.
No, I think I think you're 100% right. We're not. And listen, I'll say this: I'll give Kay Ivey the benefit of the doubt, but over the next 4 years, I would like for her to prove it.
Well, and we would, and the proof in the pudding is in the eating, right?
Right.
All right. You've been watching the voice of Alabama politics. You watch us because we watch them.